Welcome back to the Fourth Part Podcast. I'm your host, the Grumpiest Past Master. I'd like to first start off by thanking all of our supporters for tuning in to Season 1. And if you missed any episodes, don't forget to go over to our YouTube channel, the Fourth Part Podcast, or tune in wherever podcasts are found. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, as it does support the channel. As Danny and I prepare for Season 2, we'd like to introduce you to a little side project we have. We're calling it The Master's Corner, where Danny and I travel around to older brothers in the craft and learn about what masonry was, where they think it's going, where they think it should go, and about life in general. Therefore, without further ado, I'd like to introduce my co-host, the OG Daniel's son, interviewing Worshipful Richard Otto Heins, past master of Babylon Lodge number 793 in the state of New York, who was Worshipful Master in 1978. Also featured is his son, brother, Richard Heins. Thank you all, enjoy, and safe travels.
Right now I'm in the presence of deep history in Babylon Lodge. How many generations?
In Babylon Lodge, we're what, 3 or 4?
4.
Four generations, which probably go back. What's the earliest?
The earliest, well, you're talking Babylon Lodge.
Babylon Lodge, yes.
The earliest would be my father, who would have been 1960 maybe.
Wow.
59 or 60.
Wow. So I'm here with Worshipful Heins. If you can tell us a little bit about yourself, when you were raised and when you were master.
Okay. I was raised in 1962, I believe. And I became master in 1968.
78.
1978.
And that's not Master Mason, that's Worshipful Master.
Worshipful Master.
1978. So
Yeah.
this is a full circle moment from 78 to 2023.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful thing. And how were you introduced into Masonry?
Well, it's strange. I used to work in the city, and I went in on a railroad train every morning. And 2 of the fellows on the train was the conductor, Eddie Kirchenhauser, and the engineer, Ray Marsh. I didn't know it at the time, but they were Masons from Babylon Lodge. Well, we traveled every day together, and I invited them to come out fishing with me. My father took one look at these fellas and said, "They're my age." So he came with us. And that was the beginning of our trek into Masonry, because my father got to talking to the 2 of them, and the next thing I knew, he joined the lodge. Shortly after that, my brothers and I also joined the lodge, and my father raised the 3 of us at the same time. That was very, very interesting.
How many brothers would you say, were actively involved in the lodge at that time?
In the lodge?
Yeah, what would a second or fourth Wednesday look like as far as how many people were in the lodge? Would you say, was the room packed out?
Probably 40.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, I would think about 40.
That's amazing.
I don't know what it is now.
We got about half of that. We got about a half. And then I want to say, as far as active brothers who partake in situations like that or events, maybe half of that, 10.
Mm-hmm.
But, at that point in time, the lodge building was, maybe 10 years old. I think that the building was built in 54, completed in 54. The lodge was constituted, what, 1887?
Yeah.
It's
Post
still,
office. It was
yeah,
over the post office.
yeah, it's still young. I wonder what the building looked like back then. Could you give me some insight?
It was basically the same.
Except the bar looked new.
Yeah. The floor used to give us problems every year because the floor would buckle.
Oh, it still does that.
It would swell up and there'd be hills
Wow.
on the floor. And that went on for years and years. And we'd have to come down and cut the floor and reseat it.
When that was brothers would do that? Or did you guys
Oh, yeah.
hire out? That's amazing.
Yeah, we did that all ourselves.
What was Babylon's identity or strength when you were master? Was it camaraderie? Was it ritual work?
Our ritual work was always top-notch. We did not suffer fools. Just no way did we do that. The ritual work had to be absolutely top-notch. So,
I love
that was always very important.
Was that mouth to ear back then, or was it from the book? How did you guys study?
It was, in the beginning, mouth to ear, but then after a while, you were able to use the book. But for the most part, during the rehearsals, one person would hold the book, and everybody else had to have their parts memorized. And the fellow that held the book would make whatever corrections were necessary.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's missing today in masonry. And it's one of the things, I've been guilty of not being up to par with the ritual work. And the older brothers holding me accountable, or, other brothers, newer, younger, like the pride in the ritual work has always been something that's been in the walls of Babylon. That's something you always hear. Oh, Babylon is on top. But you had said something while I was setting up, that one of the requirements to be master was what? What lecture did you have to know?
You had to do either the middle chamber or the first degree lecture. There was just no way that you would ever attain mastership of the lodge without doing one of those two. I did the middle chamber. My brother Herb did the first degree lecture.
Which one's harder?
I found that the middle chamber was a little bit easier.
Really?
I thought so because it follows.
Okay, I understand.
And it goes from step to step.
Right.
The first degree lecture, I always felt was more difficult, and that's why I didn't do it.
Now, did you find having family in lodge made it easier for you to be so great in this craft?
If anything, it made it more difficult.
Really?
Yeah, because you were always under pressure to do the best. And if you didn't do the best, you heard about it.
I love that was kind of the identity of Babylon back in the day. That constant challenging and rising up to the challenge. Because how did you feel right before a degree if you were performing it?
I actually didn't feel anything.
No nerves, or...
Not really, because by the time I was doing degree work, I knew the stuff so well that it just didn't occur to me to be worried about it.
So with that, what about like eager to perform, just to show that skill?
It took a long time. It truly took a long time, because the first thing you have to do is to get used to talking in front of a room full of people,
Absolutely.
and that can be difficult. After you've gone through that, then you have to get all the words correct. And that again is difficult.
What I know you said earlier that you used to take the train into the city. What was your profession at that time, if you don't mind me asking?
I was working for, let's see, at that time, I was working for an insurance company. Shortly after that, I started working for 9X, and then the train stopped for a good number of years.
Did you?
But at the time, I was working for an insurance company as a junior underwriter,
Did you?
whatever that is.
Did you find that masonry helped you out in your day-to-day activities as far as preparation, knowing ritual work, speaking in front of people? Did that help you out in the real world?
Yes and no. Yes, in so much as you got used to talking in front of people, and that no longer bothered you. But no, because it wasn't something that you advertised.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
You did not tell people, I'm a Mason.
Yeah.
You just didn't do that.
Why?
Because it was nobody's business.
I love that.
It just was nobody's business. A lot of folks wore the ring, but a lot of times people that wear rings, they don't really come across as anything.
Right. It's and that's where the narrative I think has changed so much. I almost feel like it was your duty to protect the craft. You didn't want to advertise it because you wanted the right people to
Oh yeah,
what
no
do you think
question
about that?
about it. I remember the first person that I brought into the lodge, a fellow by the name of Bob Lewis, who was master the year before me. He came up to me one day and he said, I would like to join your Masonic lodge. Can you help me with that? And I said to him, yes, I can, but speak to me in about a year. And that's the way it was. You just did not bring anybody into the lodge. You had to know them and know them well. So for the next year, I watched him, I looked at him, I weighed his pros and cons, and after a year he came up to me and he said, would you bring me into the lodge?
That's amazing.
And I said, yes, I will. And he was the first person that I ever brought into Masonry. But it took him a year to do it.
So what would your opinion be? Because I believe wholesomely in having skin in the game before you're given something as honorable as being able to wear the badge of a Mason. And I find due to lack of numbers, we kind of make it too easy in present day. Where, you know what, give this guy, he wants to be in. I love this so much, I want to share it with all. As opposed to holding it sacred, I believe the integrity of the craft was so much higher back then. than it is today, just because there's such a high turnover, because people they don't work as hard. I remember I didn't even see the lodge room until I was a master mason. And now today, if you're an entered apprentice, you're allowed into meetings. But just knowing and wondering, what's up there, what's going on up there, it allowed me to have time invested. So now when I was in the room, I said to myself, I have to do whatever it takes to make sure that I show that I deserve to be in here. Do you think making it harder, like it was back in the day, added to those lifetime masons where they were in the craft 30, 40 years?
No question at all. Excuse me. It has to be difficult. It has to be. Because it's important. And it's not something that you just willy-nilly stumble into, stumble out of. It's important. And so, yeah, it's something that has to be weighed very seriously and judiciously.
Now you also belong to a lodge in Florida.
Yes.
How much does masonry change from coast to coast or from north to south? Is it a big difference?
Not really. There are some differences, but they're minor differences. The work is the same. Everything is basically the same.
What about the camaraderie?
Oh, yeah.
That's one of my favorite things, is the love.
I belong to, well, first of all, I've gone through the Royal Ark, the Commandery, the Consistory. I've become a 32nd degree Mason. And I've gone both ways. I've gone York Rite,
Scottish,
which is much more difficult, and Scottish Rite. I've done it all. And in order to do this, you have to have faith in something. And the faith that I have is in the camaraderie of the organization.
I love that.
Yeah.
In the hour or so that we've been here, you've spoken about what masonry has done for you. And in talking to so many other brothers, they're always talking about what they've done for masonry, their titles they've held and this and that. And just to see the love that you have for this organization, this brotherhood, it really reinstills that I belong to the right organization. I love that you look at it as something that's way bigger than you, that you would want to contribute. And in life, that's the first thing you'll get when somebody wants to join this. What do you get out of it? That's what they tell you,
Yeah.
But what do you bring to it? And that's one of the filtering methods that I use. As soon as I hear, well, what do you get out of it? It's like, I'm not too sure if this is for you, in my head. I don't immediately express
You're
that.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's not so much what you get out of it, it's what you bring to it. I've studied a lot of Masonic lore, and I can honestly say that I've learned more about myself and about other people studying that than I would ever achieve in any other fashion. It just is the way of things.
What's that? The on the hour? I love that. That's so old school. That's a cuckoo clock?
He restores clocks.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
That's amazing. It goes hand in hand with masonry.
Yeah.
Just being conscious of the now and having that reset. How many times are we doing something and you'll daydream, and before you know it, I feel like that keeps you in line. Like high noon, certain times of the day where it's just, oh, we have to refocus, realign, readjust, breathe.
Remember to breathe.
And I think a certain chime, just hearing that kind of resets your thinking, because a lot of times, especially being a Mason, you're an overthinker. You're over analyzing and you're trying to find out how to maneuver throughout the day. Sometimes you need that reset. Am I digging too deep?
Possibly. Possibly. As far as masonry goes, there are a few things that, I'd like to ask you.
Okay.
I would like to ask you, why is it that we no longer honor our past masters? In my day, the past masters of the lodge were important people. They were the people that brought the lodge up to where it is.
Right.
And suddenly, I don't see any reference to past masters. It's as if you become master. Okay, you're done. You finished. Goodbye. Why is that? Why do we not honor our past masters anymore?
That's a great question. And I think when I wake up or when certain things happen throughout the day, I always question, what am I supposed to learn from this? What is the purpose of whatever's happening? And this interview, I believe what you just asked me, is one of the bigger purposes. And it's setting the tradition. And as I was incoming to become master during my investiture, I asked one of the brothers, what do you expect from me as master? And one of the things he said was, I believe that you're going to bring back a lot of the older traditions. And that's actually going to be one of them, because I'm big on foundation. I'm big on origin. One of the reasons I joined Masonry is because I don't really have lineage. I know my father. Prior to that, I really don't know. I don't know my grandfather. On my mother's side, same thing. So I wanted to belong to something where I can establish lineage. And having you brothers here, I'm sitting here saying, man, I wish I had this. I wish I knew where I came from, going back. And when I joined the craft, one of the things that I always sit with is, I wonder if I have family in Argentina that was involved in masonry. And that is so big to me that once you handed me this trestle board and I saw all the past masters here, or when I'm sitting in lodge and I'm on the second floor just outside the lodge room, I look at that wall and I say, wow, I finally belong to something that goes further back, decades. I believe that's so important, and it's definitely something I'm going to start. As far as why we don't do it anymore, I think it goes back to our previous conversation, where people undertake this responsibility for the title of
Loss
saying
of focus.
yes,
They
and they're just trying to get through the year. Yeah.
When I was talking with Worshipful Heins.
Yes.
After he became Mason, he came to dig into history and to look into things. And then he found out that my great-grandfather was also a Master Mason. And he dug into this because of his interest in masonry and exploring things in masonry. And to come across this was a big deal. So to get back to the question, in a sense, where I think that there was a loss of focus in some of the previous worshipful masters, that the position was more about them than about what they gave back to the lodge.
Well,
In a sense, that's my personal opinion.
Right.
You know, I could have probably gotten into the worshipful master, but I didn't feel I didn't deserve to be there yet because of I didn't feel that I wasn't proficient enough.
Right.
I didn't have that. And coming from, 4 generations of Freemasons, if I'm going to step up to that plate, I got to
You have
make
to
sure
live
I'm
up to it, right.
100% on their level.
But I think a lot of that would come if the prestige that you view that title having, if more people had that, they would understand that this is what I have to bring to the table.
Yeah.
And but I would like to revert that back to you, Worshipful. Why do you think that doesn't happen?
well, that's quite a question. But let me first start with what Rich just said. After I became a Mason and I got involved with genealogy and discovered that my great-grandfather, Herman Ludeman, was master of Alamania Lodge.
Where's that?
Alamania Lodge is in Queens.
Okay.
And there he is.
I got it. I got it.
Now, he was master in the 1800s,
Jeez, wow.
and we never knew it until I found this paperwork all rolled up in some obscure corner. And after I unrolled it and framed it, I said, wow, I have another Mason.
Where did you find that?
I don't really remember.
Talk about fate.
Right?
I don't remember. But it came up.
Do you remember when you found it? Was it just in that attic? Or were you just...
I probably found it in amongst things that my mother might have had,
Wow.
Okay.
because this was her grandfather.
That's amazing.
So it would have been my grandmother's father. So yeah, I would say that somehow my mother found it, put it aside, and then after her death, I found it.
Well, it's funny because we were just talking about this, especially Rich. This interview is going to be seen, and it's almost as equivalent as you finding that. You found that belonging to another Mason. And you probably never met him.
No,
You had to, yeah. So you're as you find that, you sit there and you look at it. Imagine being able to see a video, an interview with him.
yeah.
Yeah, that'd be wild, right?
3 generations from
Absolutely.
now. How surreal is that? Wow.
I mean, when I look at that, and I say to myself, my God, look at that beautiful work,
Yeah.
the picture of him, all of the different times that he took degrees. And we look now at what we currently get.
Yeah.
It's so less. It's a lot less.
It's so much less.
Right.
I mean, this is a piece of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the artwork. I consider it artwork that I donated to the lodge after my father passed, which was the calligraphy. What that was? Remind me again, Uncle Rick, about that.
That was done by Jean Bretet. Jean Bretet was active back when I was a Mason, and he did excellent calligraphy work. And
That's something that's lost today as
Many,
well.
many things that we have in our family came down from him. I probably have some things of his tucked away somewhere. It's quite amazing.
Whenever I go through my father likes to keep a lot of stuff, especially paperwork, documents, and he has some things of my grandfather in there. My father came here when he was 6 from Argentina, but he came with his mother, his father, and his family stayed there. But I always, as I'm looking, I'm like, maybe I'll find something that'll show that I was a Mason back then.
You never know.
You never know.
You never know.
But I find the Masons of yesteryear all had that kind of same temperament, that calmness.
They were cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, it's like where are you first prepared to be a Mason? In your heart.
Yeah.
And that's something that I find so true, especially back in the day.
But you know, the other thing was everybody that became the master of the lodge generally wanted to add something to the lodge. No matter what. But something had to be added. The Strawberry Festival. And what he did was he drove out east, picked up a whole bunch of strawberries, brought them back to the lodge, and they spent a day or so cleaning them all, after which he had the festival. When I became master, not to be outdone by him, I thought, well, we're going to have a clam bake. So, excuse me, we went out and dug a bunch of clams and had hamburgers and hot dogs and corn and every manner of things, and stood around opening clams for the next 3 hours so everybody could have clams. I know back in my day, I did the clam bake. I also formed a library. I don't know if that is still
Yes, it is
working, but
it is.
I started the library, and I also started the Past Masters Association.
Yes.
The first member of the association was Benjamin Arapach. He owned the hardware store down in town, and he was the oldest past master that still came to meetings.
Wow.
So I chose him to be the head of the Past Masters Association. I don't know if that's still available.
Oh, it's going, and it's going strong. What was the thinking behind starting that association? What was its purpose?
Purpose was very simple. I stepped into being master, and I thought to myself, there's all kinds of talent in the past masters that still come out. And these people can teach me and show me how things used to be. And that's important for me to know. And so I started the Past Masters group so that I would constantly have that information. And Ben Arapach was the perfect guy to head it because he had a memory like a trap. He remembered everything. And we would sit and talk about things in the past and how things were now. And you could compare and you could weigh one against the other and make little changes. It was important.
Yeah, it still serves that way today. I think, though, masonry is still missing something. I think we make it too easy. I think we don't challenge ourselves. We're very focused on surviving, not thriving. And it's hard to find out how to bring back those Renaissance years of Freemasonry. I think in hearing you speak, I think camaraderie might be the short-term answer. But I believe that the camaraderie and holding each other accountable to progress the craft, like you said, is essential. And also protect it. You know, I see masonry being billboarded everywhere.
I don't see masonry disappearing. I don't see it going anywhere. Yes, you might lose some lodges. Yes, membership may shrink. All of that will happen, but that's because of the way things are. The people that are going to be involved will be just as strong, if not stronger,
I like
than
that.
the people that used to be involved. It's a very simple thing. You have to love what you're doing, or don't do it.
Right, I agree. You just put a lot in perspective there. Big business is the same way. Companies. How many times do you see a large percentage of the employees kind of just cruising, and you see a handful of people that really drive
That
the
make it
company,
happen.
that make it happen.
Yeah.
And you know, just hearing that is very comforting. You know, I love it. I eat, sleep, and breathe masonry. And to just be afforded the opportunity to sit in the same room and have you willing to talk and speak to me about Freemasonry and welcome me into your Masonic life is an honor and a lifelong memory for me. And I appreciate you setting this up. What are your thoughts on the present day of what Freemasonry is?
My present thoughts, when I was raised, I only had one other candidate with me. And I believe myself that he was raised in for the wrong reason. He didn't stay with the lodge. He went right to a Scottish Rite and he didn't even get proficient with the Blue Lodge yet. He just jumped right into it, you know? And I said, well, why don't you learn about this first? What you're just entering now is the Blue Lodge.
Right.
And then, you know, advance. No, I'm in here. I want to get this. I want to get that.
Yeah.
So to me, it was a prestigious type of thing. It wasn't about what you were going to put into. So that kind of opened my eyes to it a little bit. You know, I grew up in a Masonic family.
Yeah.
You know, my mother was Eastern Star. My aunt and uncles all were Eastern Star and Freemasons. And, you know, I remember, you know, coming there as kids, skidding across the dance floor on my knees.
You speak about that all the time.
You know, going across to Argyle and all that good stuff. But I think there was more, and I don't want to offend, but I think there was more integrity back then in Masonry than there is now. I feel like it's kind of commercialized a little bit.
Yeah.
It wasn't discussed. If somebody wanted to be a Mason, they came to you.
Yeah.
They knew you're a Mason from whatever reasons, but it was something that you wanted. And like you said, you didn't say, okay, yeah, come on down, we'll do it right now, we'll get you in, but no, it was like Uncle Rick said, you know, you wait a year.
How easy,
you know?
Now you coming from a Masonic household, when you asked to be a Mason, was it no problem or I don't know?
Well, you know what? No. I didn't have an intention of going into Masonry.
Really?
None. My father, you know, raising us kids, you know, my older brothers were D Malay. I didn't do D Malay. I was, I guess, being a Sag, I'm a little bit of a rebel. I like to do my own thing. You know, I always did. I was at a wedding in 2011 at the lodge, and it just, everything made sense. It felt home. It felt like I belonged. It's like, this is where I belong. And I went upstairs and saw my grandfather and my father, my two uncles up on the wall. And it just brought back a lot of really, really good memories I had as a child. And then I said to Howard Wissing, Harry, and I said, I want in. I want to do this. But you know what he did? He led me along. He wanted to make sure. It wasn't a right away thing.
Yeah.
You know, he waited about a year. You know, it was 2011, 2012. I decided to go in. I called my father up, told him what I was doing, and of course he was ecstatic. You know, he was very happy. And which he, you know, when I was raised, he got me my ring. You know, and him raising me, it was a touching moment. You know, so when I called my father up and told him what was going on, he's like, "Oh, that's great. That's great." But I didn't. As much as I knew I can do it. You know, I got in there and realized that there's a lot more to masonry.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And people don't realize that. And then you know, I was, you know, learning everything, you know, becoming proficient and but then it seemed like it was just getting easier.
Right.
The study classes, you know, I had Joe, I gotta remember his last name, forgive me, not Konkluski. Even though he was always there, who doesn't love Joe, but Cordella, Joe
Yeah,
Cordella.
so Cordella, yes.
He was doing
teaching, he did me as well.
Yeah, and you know, they were making sure you understood. He was making sure you understood. But now it's whether or not you understand it. I think that they're just letting them in, and I don't know if that's because of the lodge needing more people for
Right.
you know, dues and stuff. You know, because of expenses, and did it become that easy for that reason, or it seemed like it was like a desperation thing.
I think that's one of my concerns, and I'm gonna pass this back to you, Worshipful. I sat in a second degree. I don't want to say the lodge. It was the degree work was wonderful. The middle chamber lecture was wonderful, but I did see in some of the candidates, even in reciting the obligation, it was
a mess.
Yeah, and it wasn't the degree work per se. It was in the candidate that was reciting this obligation. You can see there wasn't that much pride. I remember it was when I did it. It was euphoric for me. I was sitting there and I'm like, this is something that I hold dear.
Yeah.
This is God is witnessing this,
Yeah.
and it's my duty to make sure that I live up to this.
Yeah.
And I as I was reciting it, I was doing it with so much pride. It meant the world to me. But I could see this. It was almost a joke.
Yeah, it was going through the motions.
Yeah.
You know, and my last where I was at the last degree I was at, I kind of felt the same way, and it took me back a little bit because I was thinking to myself, you know, you got to make sure
Right.
that these guys know what's expected of them.
It's the filtering process.
You know, and it's not about who you're bringing in; it's about what you're bringing in.
Yeah.
You know, not the fact that we're not about numbers.
Right.
You know, we're about integrity. We're about being on the level. You know,
quality, not quantity.
You know, and you know, we're not about numbers. You know, and I think that got lost a little bit. And when you bring in, when you're not vetting correctly,
Right.
and you bring in some candidates you might not be really too sure about because you didn't really get to know them the way you should.
Right.
And next thing you know, that candidate could do something to disrespect the lodge. And that's kind of on the person that brings that candidate to the table. That's how I look at it. I know everybody's responsible for their own actions, But if you're bringing somebody into the lodge and that person does something wrong to the lodge, that reflects the
On the
person
lodge, right.
that brought you in and started you in Freemasonry. So in a sense, I hold both those people liable for that. In a sense.
You're absolutely right. Masonry has cheapened itself over the years, and I see it now. I see Masonry being not as important as it once was. And the only way you're going to get past that is by spending more time with the new members that are coming in to make sure that you have the right members coming in. What good does it take to bring in people that are going to hurt the organization rather than help it? I just don't see where any good comes of that. If we have to close some lodges, so be it.
Right.
But those that remain should be stronger. And that's the bottom line.
So, I'd like to put myself in the hot seat. We had spoken about this in the car. You've never met me before.
No.
I want to ask you. First impressions are everything. How could I represent the lodge better? The way I walked into your house, I tried to greet you as respectfully as I could. Is there anything I can do that you saw as I walked in my presentation?
No.
Really?
I made him take his Yankee hat off.
No, I saw nothing because I expected nothing. I didn't
Great
know
answer.
I didn't know what to expect. And so when you walked into the house, you were a person. And now, of course, I've gotten to know a little bit more about you. And so I might have changed my opinion a little bit. But no, there were no first impressions. None at all.
That's as Masonic of an answer as you can give. I appreciate that answer. And I'm actually going to take that into maybe my day-to-day dealings with people. You know, having no expectation. Well, this is a person.
They can't let you down.
Yeah, you can't let me down.
You know?
You know, but just to play off what I was saying, you know, you'll encounter somebody, maybe a coworker, and you'll say, "This person reminds me of my cousin," and then you try to bond to that. Yeah. But that doesn't belong to that person. Nope. So then when things don't go the way they're supposed to, now you're automatically disappointed, as opposed to, no, this is a person. Yeah. Now you have to rebuild a relationship. Don't try to bond based on insecurity or whatnot. And forgive me for rambling. But yeah, I love that answer. I really do. How can Masonry benefit a young man today?
Does Masonry have to benefit anybody?
No.
You know,
he's good.
You ask questions that there are no answers to. How does Masonry benefit a young man? Well, that's all according to who the young man is, who the Masons are, what they have going on. It doesn't wash.
So, if I could restructure that question. You had mentioned that Masonry isn't going anywhere. It still has a place. I strongly believe, which it's just a belief, it's based on what I've witnessed. I feel masonry can direct a young man who maybe feels that they have purpose to add to a greater whole, not to be an not to be a liability to society, but to be an asset. And I feel that masonry, whether it's an officer line, but it teaches you how to be an individual, but also to contribute to a greater whole. So you can come into masonry and you can be a banker, and the worshipful master could be a gardener.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point in time, you release ego, and you partake in a bigger system that's bigger than yourself.
You're absolutely right. What you're saying is 100% true.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no two ways about it. What you've done is you just put in front of us what masonry is all about. And that's the bottom line.
It's hard to, especially in this format, because you really can't talk about masonry in depth. You don't want to advertise it as something that, you want to protect it. At the same time, too, you also want to create a standard on how masonry should be lived, right?
I believe that masonry can be talked about.
Okay.
It can be talked about. There are certain areas that cannot be talked about, ritual work and such, but basic lodge principles certainly can be talked about.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with that. I have no problem people knowing that I'm a Mason. No problem at all. Never have. Never will. Because I feel that the way I conduct myself is above board. And
I
so
agree.
there's no problem.
You have this presence that you carry, and that's a skill. I don't know if it can be taught, but when I step foot into your house, and I already hold myself to the thinking that I have to carry myself and present myself in the best possible way. But there's certain people in life that you come across and you know that this person is not going to accept anything less than the best that I have to offer. And you have that presence. Has it always been like that, Rich?
Yeah. All three of them.
Yeah?
Yeah. But I can tell you honestly,
Uh-huh.
Out of the three, the youngest, he was the toughest.
Yeah?
He had to keep up with his older brothers, and he did.
Makes
In
sense.
every aspect of the way, physically, mentally, yeah, man, without a doubt.
Like
you know?
you sit up certain.
Oh, yeah.
Forgive me for
Yeah.
slouching. I'm just leaning
Yeah.
into the microphone, but I know I should be trimmed and proper.
You knew you had to watch your P's and Q's. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But having known that I'm his namesake, that it's an honor to me. Because I feel that he's had such a positive impact in my life. In every aspect, every time I was with my Uncle Rick, there was always a good time. There was always a good memory. There was always something positive. And when you have that in your life, that's a gift. Because that's something that doesn't always happen with everybody. Everybody has different lives. They have hardships. They have things that happen that set them back. But if anything happened to me that way, I knew I had this man. And he had my back, no matter what.
Yeah. A couple times we were talking, and I could see you get choked up a little bit.
I can't
Why?
help it. Because it's important to me, that he knows this. Because some people don't know how important they are to somebody until it's too late. and he knows, because I've told him, my first clam I had was was at his house,
Wow.
where he egged me on to getting a clam. He's like, come on, eat it, put some hair on your chest,
Yeah, I love
Do
that.
it, and, sitting here doing this right now, I think of my father and how I miss that. I miss doing this with him, and it kind of upsets me.
Yeah.
But it was just as important to me to do this with my Uncle Rick as it would have been to do with my father. But I'm not going to miss this opportunity with my Uncle Rick because I don't think I could actually live with it. Because right now this is bringing a bunch of emotions with me, with my father.
That's what masonry's about.
Yeah. But my Uncle Rick was one of the more important men in my life. I can honestly tell you that.
Worshipful. What do you have to say for that? And I know you always knew
Wow.
it.
That's some pretty heavy stuff. To say that I'm honored is not even coming close. Rich means a lot to me. But he means a lot because of who he is, what he is, and how he carries himself. That means so much more. It's just unbelievable. It is. It's truly unbelievable.
I knowing, being able to call you my brother, and to be able to follow in your footsteps as a master of a lodge, I'm blessed to be able to share this memory and this moment with you. It means a lot to me too. Like, I can't wait to have something like this as well. I raised my father in the lodge.
Did you?
Yeah. It's something we joke about. We go back and forth. I always tell my father, "Remember who raised you."
Yeah.
But it's transformed my relationship with my father. My father, in my day-to-day dealings with him, he always felt like he had to teach me something and be what a father is. But in lodge, he's my brother, and we have been able to really share experiences.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's so crazy how the relationship transformed and what this fraternity can do. Same two men, but the experience is different, and he's my protector, he's my guider in the real world, but in lodge, he's my brother.
Yeah. It truly is amazing. And that's what Masonry is all about. And that's what it should be all about. I never knew this man. Never met him, never knew him. But I feel such a bond towards him right now.
Yeah.
That it's unbelievable.
It's, yeah. So, I'm gonna start to conclude this.
Yeah.
But what is the biggest benefit that you've gotten from masonry?
The biggest benefit that I've gotten from Masonry is simply being a Mason.
Excellent. He's so good. He's so good.
And that's it.
That is just being a man of service. That's what it comes down to. When you're a man of service, this fraternity is golden, I feel, because you have plenty of opportunity to speak to younger brothers. You have a repository of just people that you can help and are also willing to help. One of the biggest things that I had trouble with, and that I've learned maybe within the past couple of years, I've always helped other people, but I didn't realize that being able to receive help actually helped the person that was trying to help me. You offer them the ability to pay you back.
Yeah, it's harder to receive help than it
Right?
is to give it.
It is. I didn't realize that. And
always feel guilty.
yeah,
You know,
because
it's
I
like
didn't need
taking
it.
advantage of something like that.
But at the same time too, that feeling that you got from helping somebody else,
Feel important.
you paid it forward.
Yeah, I never
So
really
I
looked
find
at it
that
that way.
for me, masonry has given me a lot of opportunities to provide that for brothers, to help when needed without even asking, but also to offer them the ability to do that too. And you know, it's a safe place
Yeah.
of brotherly love, camaraderie, and you have like-minded people with the same interests. So you have all of that in the crock pot. I mean, the meal is going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
You know, I agree.
Masonry is very strange. And the reason it's very strange is because it's different for each person.
Right.
And that makes it something beautiful. It really does.
The possibilities are endless.
Absolutely. Now, I mentioned before that I went up the York Rite and the Scottish Rite. I went both ways because I wanted to know as much as I could know about Masonry. And so I went both ways. What did it mean? Actually, becoming a member of the Blue Lodge meant more.
I agree.
Yeah, I
It
agree
meant
too.
more. Because once you become a member of the Blue Lodge, as far as I'm concerned, that's it. That's where it's all about.
It's the nucleus.
Anything else is fluff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I getting back to your question, you know, if Masonry is a brother or something like that. I don't look at that in that way, and I don't look at it as a worldly thing. It's more of a universal thing.
Right.
We're praying to the great architect, which is whoever formed the universe. So we're more about the universe, the afterlife, what goes on after, where do we go, and you know. But I think that's what my philosophy on it is. When you're becoming a Freemason and being raised, is you're getting away the baggage that we're the only ones. We're the only. It's more than just camaraderie
Right.
here. It's no matter where you go in this world,
Masonry.
you'll have a Masonic temple. Basically, you'll have brothers to help you.
Right.
Well, no matter where you are, you can make a phone call and say, "Hey, I'm going to be over in Barbados or wherever, and there's a Masonic temple there, and they're going to have somebody there to greet you and be a brother." You know, and I think that's the important thing about Masonry. But I also think it's a lot more than just here. I think it expands in the universe.
Yeah, I always look at it as a mason is a drop of dye in water. How do you decorate the environment, your environment? Whether it's going to the gas station and seeing somebody and greeting them with a smile. Like, how are you as a mason, as a coworker, a brother, a husband, an uncle? You just being present in every aspect of life in a positive way, and then everywhere's home. Everywhere's your temple.
Yeah.
You know, you can be that one person that person may just look forward. You know, at 8:00, I cross paths with Rich. He's got a joke for me. That's the highlight of my day. You're decorating your environment. You're hanging a picture in your world of life.
Yeah.
You know, also the ability to peel back layers.
Yeah.
You know, masonry metaphors are big. You know, the working tools of an operative mason and a speculative mason teaches you how to peel back layers in the real world. You know, as I'm driving, if somebody cuts me off, maybe I would have gotten mad before, but as a mason, hey, that guy might be on the way to the hospital to see his wife who's giving birth.
Different perspective.
You know, it's a different outlook, different perspective on life. It allows you to
Be
use
more
your brain,
understanding.
logic.
It's about more being a response than a reaction.
Yes.
Because a reaction is a reflex, a response you think about first. And
Absolutely.
I think that's a lot of what Masonry is about thinking about it before you do it, and not just doing it out of a reflex.
You're refining the gentleman. You have gentlemen and you have refined gentlemen. And that's something that I strive for. And just being in the presence of brothers like yourselves, it just allows that.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's wise counsel, whether it's a different perspective on masonry. I mean, hearing you say that I ask questions that there's no answers to, I love that. I might put it on a t-shirt.
There you go.
The current secretary of the lodge, Matthew Sales, and we have conversations like this all the time. He calls me a walking anxiety attack because I'm always causing him. He's like, you make me overthink. I can't deal with it. But I do appreciate your time, and I can't wait to edit this and send it out to you guys.
Yeah.
Any last words for the audience? Worshipful?
Well, funerals.
Uh-huh.
When we used to give funerals, it was done by memorization. Is it still that way?
No, I haven't seen one done that way. I haven't. But again, I'm big on the wise counsel. I'm big on the way it used to be done. I'm a traditionalist that way. And if I want to see it, I have to be the change that I wish to see. So
Lead by example.
I'm going to start working on that.
Yeah. Alan Pemberthy used to do the main funeral, and I would do touches.
Yeah.
But the two of us always did it from memory.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I'm talking.
Yeah.
Like, for me to be up in your position, I that's how I feel. Like my proficiency is not
Right.
where it needs to be, where I would feel comfortable enough to do that.
Well, don't compare your beginning to somebody else's middle or end. You know, it started somewhere. It started to work.
You got to start it somewhere.
Absolutely.
But, it's a big commitment, and that people have to remember that too. You know, being a worshipful master is a big commitment. It really is.
It took me a while. I joined the York Rite, and I did a couple degrees on the Scottish Rite, and then I stopped. And I told myself, if I can't give my all to this, I don't want to do it. If I can't contribute to it in any way, shape, or form at that point, except just being part of it, being present, I don't want to do it. So I stopped for a little bit, and I focused all on the Blue Lodge. And then there will come a time where I will have time in my life, because I'm such a fan of Masonry and the allegory that goes along with it, that, you know, I'll exercise that.
Before we take off,
Yeah,
I just want to talk about this real quick.
Let me put it. Let me hold it up the other way. That camera. Let's use that camera. You know what? Let me use this one.
Yeah.
Right here. Hold it up right in front of you. You're good. Come back some. And go ahead. What's that? Speak about it.
All right, talk about this picture I'm holding up here of your father and your two brothers.
I'm not sure exactly what that is.
We both
My father was master, and my one brother was not in line yet, and the other two, Herb and myself, were both in line.
That's a beautiful picture. And what year is that, would you say? The lodge still looks that way, by the way.
Yeah,
like what, 72?
I don't know.
Wow.
Gotta be early 70s.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you gentlemen's time,
We
brothers.
appreciate your time.
Yeah, well,
Sometimes you can't hold back the truth.
absolutely. I thank you again.
Yeah.
I'm your host, the Fourth Part Podcast. We're out of here.